You were taught that love is about sacrifice, that to be loved you must be agreeable, patient, soft. You were told that love is the reward for goodness, and goodness means putting others before yourself, even if it kills something inside you. But what if that's a lie? What if love, real love, doesn't grow in the soil of self-denial? What if your constant compromises, your subtle people-pleasing, your endless apologies, what if these are the very things killing the intimacy you crave? Nietzsche, the infamous German philosopher with a hammer in one hand and a mirror in the other, dared to ask, what if the love we've been sold is counterfeit? He didn't write love poems. He wrote detonations, ideas that explode in the soul and reveal how much of our emotional lives are built on inherited illusions. And among those illusions is this, that we must hide who we are to be loved. But Nietzsche insisted, anything built on a lie is doomed to rot. To find real connection, we must have the courage to destroy the masks we wear, to abandon morality when it becomes manipulation, to love not as slaves seeking approval, but as creators, fierce and honest, building a union from strength, not need. This isn't self-help, this is self-confrontation, a journey into the abyss of what love becomes when we dare to bring our entire being into it, raw, unfiltered, free. Let's begin. In the dim theater of modern relationships, most enter not as themselves, but as actors, wearing well-rehearsed masks. These masks are stitched together from expectations, fears, and fragile hopes. We present a version of ourselves that we think will be loved, admired, or simply tolerated. Nietzsche, that fierce enemy of illusion, would not have smiled upon such artifice. For him, truth was a weapon and a salvation. He knew that only the authentic self, raw and unpolished, could ever love or be loved in a way that was worthy of the name. The prison of social personas. We are taught early on to please, to smile, to smooth the edges of our being. We learn that honesty is dangerous, that intensity might scare others away. So we shrink, we soften, we lie, not through words necessarily, but through silence, through omission, through the performance of harmony. But Nietzsche cries out, become who you are, not who you were told to be, not who you are expected to be, and certainly not a palatable version of your soul trimmed down for easy consumption. In relationships, this becomes urgent, because when you wear a mask to be loved, only the mask is loved. You remain alone, untouched. Why Nietzsche praised the honest soul? Nietzsche's admiration was reserved for those who dared to speak their truth, especially when it cost them something. The free spirit, as he called them, was not a cynical nihilist, but someone who had wrestled with their own chaos and emerged unafraid to show it. This is the kind of honesty that can rupture a fake relationship and give birth to a real one. In a world where "I'm fine" is the default lie, where boundaries are softened into people-pleasing, and where self-sacrifice is mistaken for virtue, Nietzsche reminds us that honesty is not cruelty, it is clarity. If you cannot tell your partner your truth, if you cannot say, "This is who I am," whether you like it or not, then you have built a relationship on shifting sand. The cost of hiding your true will. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power is often misunderstood. It's not about dominating others, but about asserting the fullness of your being, your desires, your instincts, your uniqueness. When you suppress that will in a relationship, out of fear, politeness, or guilt, you create a quiet war within yourself. Over time, resentment grows. You begin to hate the person for whom you have sacrificed your truth, even though they never asked you to. You blame them for not seeing you, even though you never revealed yourself. And the love that was once alive begins to decay under the weight of unspoken needs. To live authentically in love is to accept that you might not be accepted. It is to risk rejection in the name of truth. And yet, paradoxically, this risk is the only path to intimacy. Anything less is a performance, a negotiation, a mutually agreed upon dream. How truth-telling transforms intimacy. Real intimacy begins when the masks fall, when you confess not just your stories, but your contradictions. When you can say, "I am afraid," and not be ashamed. When you can express your desires without filtering them through social scripts. This kind of truth-telling cuts through the fog of emotional manipulation and opens a space for something sacred, the meeting of two actual beings, not two projections. Nietzsche would have us burn the script, to throw away the idealized version of love sold by poets and priests. In its place, he would build something fierce and alive, an intimacy that evolves, that sometimes wounds, but always reveals. Because love, in the Nietzschean sense, is not about comfort, it is about growth. It is the fire in which false selves are melted down, and a deeper, truer connection can emerge. But only if you are willing to show up, not as who you should be, but as who you are. And that requires immense courage. There is a quiet revolution that begins within the soul, a revolution that declares, I will no longer outsource my worth. Nietzsche called it the will to power, but not in the crude sense of dominance. It is the power to become who you are, to shape the world from the inside out, to no longer beg others for permission to feel whole. This idea, radical and raw, changes everything about how we love. For most, love is a barter of insecurities. We hand over our emotional lives to others, like fragile artifacts, hoping they will cherish them. But what if love could be something nobler, something free? What if it began with the sovereignty of your inner world, taking responsibility for your inner world? We are told that others make us feel things, that if our partner forgets a text, it ruins our day, that if someone rejects us, it destroys our self-esteem. But this is the emotional posture of a slave, dependent, reactive, brittle. Nietzsche challenges us to reverse this dependency. He would ask, who gave them that power over you? To live by the will to power is to reclaim authorship of your emotional state, not through numbness or detachment, but through radical inner strength. You feel deeply, yes, but you do not collapse. You do not become a weather vane for someone else's moods. You become the storm and the sky that holds it. This is not the absence of love. It is the foundation of real love. Because until you are emotionally sovereign, your relationships will always be rooted in need, not choice. Escaping the need for validation. The hunger for validation is a kind of spiritual poverty. It turns every interaction into a silent question. Do you like me? Am I enough? Will you stay? This is not love. This is emotional begging. Nietzsche's philosophy is a call to end that hunger, to say, I do not need your approval to be worthy. I am worthy by the sheer force of my becoming. The will to power is not about arrogance. It is about rootedness. When you know your value, you no longer contort yourself to earn it. This shift transforms relationships. Instead of clinging, you offer. Instead of pleading, you reveal. And instead of fearing loss, you trust in your ability to rise again, no matter who stays or leaves. When you no longer need to be needed, you can finally choose to love. Transforming conflict into growth. Conflict is not a sign of failure. It is the friction where truths meet. But most couples treat conflict as a threat, a deviation from the fantasy of perfect harmony. Nietzsche teaches us to embrace struggle, not as cruelty, but as alchemy. The will to power does not run from discomfort, it uses it. It says, let us be sharpened by our differences. Let our arguments be fire that burns away illusion, not weapons that destroy. In the sovereign relationship, conflict becomes sacred. It is where both partners are tested. Do they collapse into blame? Do they retreat into silence? Or do they rise, speak, and listen? Not to win, but to understand. If you want a love that evolves, you must be willing to wrestle with it. Love as a dynamic force, not a contract. So many relationships die not from cruelty, but from stagnation. They become agreements, silent contracts of mutual convenience. You play this role, I'll play that one. We'll pretend to be happy. We'll pretend this is enough. Nietzsche offers a dangerous alternative. Let love be alive. Let it change you. Let it challenge you. Let it sometimes break your heart and make you stronger for it. The will to power in love means you are never fixed, and neither is your partner. You do not cling to who they were 5 years ago. You meet them again and again. You allow yourself to evolve. and you allow them to do the same, even if it scares you. This kind of love is not comfortable, but it is real, because to truly love someone is to say, I see your becoming, and I choose to stand beside it, not out of fear, not out of need, but because the fire in you speaks to the fire in me. There is a paradox at the heart of every human connection. The more we long to merge, the more we are reminded of our separateness. Two souls, no matter how close, remain fundamentally distinct. And Nietzsche, lover of paradoxes, did not fear this truth. He embraced it. For him, love is not fusion. It is not the annihilation of the self in the other. Real love, he believed, requires distance, friction, and above all, the courage to face the abyss that exists between one consciousness and another. Most flee from this abyss, but the rare few who can stare into it together, they create something sacred. Why real connection requires distance? We are conditioned to believe that closeness means total access, that love means knowing everything about the other person, merging schedules, desires, even identities. But Nietzsche would call this a form of emotional tyranny. To love is not to possess. It is to stand in awe of the other's mystery. If you collapse the space between you and the other, you kill what made them beautiful to begin with. Their independence, their strange ideas, their irreducible otherness all vanish under the pressure of togetherness. But if you can maintain distance, you make room for reverence. You see your partner not as an extension of your needs, but as a sovereign universe orbiting beside you, not owned but chosen. Love without distance becomes suffocation. Love with distance becomes devotion, facing the terror of being truly seen. There's a reason we wear masks, even in our most intimate bonds. Because to be seen, truly seen, is terrifying. Not the curated self, not the charming self, but the chaotic, contradictory self. The one that's insecure, proud, ashamed, wild. Nietzsche believed that most people cannot bear this kind of exposure. They prefer illusions, roles, predictable patterns. But in doing so, they cut off the possibility of deep connection. To be truly loved, you must risk being known. And being known means allowing the other to see your shadows. It means letting them witness your doubt, your rage, your fear, not as confession, but as truth. This kind of vulnerability is not soft. It is brutal. And it is rare, but it is also the only way to build a love that does not collapse under the weight of reality. Solitude as the foundation of love. Nietzsche held solitude in the highest regard. Not loneliness, but solitude, the fierce clarity of being alone with oneself, unafraid. He warned that those who do not know how to be alone will enter relationships not out of fullness, but out of fear. And fear distorts everything. When you are afraid to be alone, you cling, you tolerate what hurts, you lie to preserve the bond. But when you have made peace with solitude, you bring your whole self to love, not because you need the other to complete you, but because you choose them freely, without desperation. A relationship between two people who cherish solitude is a rare and powerful thing. It is a dance, not a merger. It is presence without pressure, space without abandonment, a kind of love that breathes, not chokes. How embracing difference deepens intimacy. In most relationships, difference is seen as a threat. You like solitude, they need constant connection. You speak in fire, they speak in water. You dream in chaos, they worship order. And so the temptation arises to mold the other into a mirror, to sand down their edges until they resemble you. But Nietzsche would call this spiritual laziness. True intimacy is not about sameness. It is about fascination. It is the ability to look into the eyes of someone unlike you and say, I do not fully understand you, but I want to. This is not tolerance. This is reverence. The highest form of love, for Nietzsche, is the ability to let the other remain other. To love, not in spite of their strangeness, but because of it. Because only when difference is allowed to live can a relationship become a source of wonder, not control. If Chapter 3 unveiled the abyss between two souls, Chapter 4 demands we step into it. For between the ideal of love and the real experience of it lies a battlefield, not of arguments or betrayals, but of something more insidious, resentment, guilt, and the quiet, invisible death of romantic fantasies we were never meant to carry. Nietzsche saw this clearly. He understood that much of what poisons relationships doesn't come from hate, but from love corrupted by morality, expectations disguised as virtue, duty mistaken for devotion, and guilt, that ancient parasite, wrapping its claws around the heart until what once felt sacred becomes a cage. This is where love either dies or is reborn. How moral expectations poison. Love, the idea that love should be selfless, obedient, forever patient, this is not love. It is moral propaganda, a story handed down through centuries of religious control and social conditioning. Nietzsche called this slave morality, a system of values designed to domesticate human passion and bind it in chains of guilt. It whispers that your desire is selfish, that your anger is sinful, that your boundaries are cruel, and so we obey, we apologize for our intensity, we swallow our needs, we fake forgiveness, and we call this maturity. But what it truly is, what Nietzsche would call it, is a betrayal of the self. Love born from obligation is not love, it is performance. And no matter how noble it looks on the outside, inside, it breeds resentment like mold growing behind a painted wall. Letting go of the shoulds in relationships. You should be more affectionate. You should be more forgiving. You should want the same things I want. Every relationship comes with its unspoken rules, scripts inherited from culture, parents, movies. These shoulds feel like truths, but they are cages. Nietzsche teaches us to dismantle these inherited values, to ask, whose morality is this? Who benefits from this ideal version of love I am trying so hard to live up to? What if love didn't have to look a certain way? What if the rules could be rewritten by two courageous souls who trust not in a template, but in the evolving truth of their connection? Letting go of the shoulds means killing the fantasy, but what is born in its place is something far more powerful, a love that is not idealized, but real. Turning pain into creative strength, pain in relationships, is inevitable. But Nietzsche believed pain was not a problem, it was a raw material. To him, the highest type of human is not the one who avoids suffering, but the one who transforms it, who takes betrayal and shapes it into art, who takes heartbreak and lets it deepen the soul. Most people avoid this transformation. They weaponize their pain instead. They make their partner pay. They keep emotional score. They nurse wounds into grudges and call it justice. But resentment is a coward's revenge. It requires no courage, no growth, just passive-aggressive martyrdom. Nietzsche offers a different path. When love wounds you, let it sharpen you. Let it cut away what was false. Let it teach you where you abandoned yourself so you never do again. This is not forgiveness. This is becoming. Rebuilding love beyond duty and resentment. So what remains after resentment is burned away. After guilt has been exiled and romantic ideals have been shattered, what remains is space. Space to choose again. Space to rebuild, not based on duty, but desire, not on moral expectations, but on mutual power. A love that says, I am with you not because I must be, but because I want to be. And I want to be because we create something better together than we do apart. This kind of love is not sentimental. It is forged in fire. It does not promise eternal bliss, but it offers truth. And from truth, everything alive can grow. Nietzsche once wrote, "What is done out of love always takes place beyond good and evil. In that beyond, there is no resentment, no guilt, only two souls standing in their fullness, unashamed." If Nietzsche taught us anything, it is this: love is not for the faint-hearted. To love with depth, with ferocity, with truth, you must become something more than what society told you to be. You must transcend comfort, transcend conditioning. You must evolve into the one who does not need love to feel whole, but who chooses love from wholeness. This is the Overman, the Übermensch, not as a superhuman, but as a creator of values, one who has passed through the fire of resentment, guilt, illusion, and emerged sovereign, whole, free. And when the Overman loves, he does not kneel, he does not chain, he dances, he draws near not to possess but to witness. He brings not half a heart, but an entire cosmos. This is the sacred dance between two creators, loving without possession. Most love stories end in possession, in ownership, in control. We say, "You're mine." We act as if the other's love must be secured, protected, monitored. But Nietzsche would laugh at this spiritual smallness. For him, love is not a cage, it is a flame. To love without possession is to let the other be wild. It is to say, I do not need to own you to love you. I do not need to trap you to trust you. If you stay, it is because you choose to, not because you have nowhere else to go. This is terrifying for the ego, but divine for the soul, because love becomes sacred not when it is bound, but when it is freely given again and again by two souls that do not need each other, but choose each other daily. The beauty of the untamed other. The more we try to tame love, the more it dies. We try to fix it into shapes, titles, roles, expectations. But true love is wild. It refuses to be tamed. It arrives like a storm and speaks in tongues. It does not explain itself. It demands that you evolve or be burned by its heat. Nietzsche's Overman does not run from this. He loves not the manageable other, but the untamed other. The one who surprises, who challenges, who refuses to become a character in your script. To love in this way is to live in awe, to say, I do not fully understand you, and I never will. And that is why I stay. Because mystery is not a problem. It is the very heartbeat of intimacy. Creating a relationship that transcends morality. Most relationships are governed by invisible moral contracts. What you should do, how you should act, what love should look like. These contracts are inherited, never questioned, but Nietzsche urges us to break these chains, to build relationships not on borrowed ethics, but on chosen truths. To transcend morality in love is to say, we decide what is right for us. We do not bow to tradition. We do not mimic society, we create. We invent our rituals, our boundaries, our expressions. We love in ways that might seem strange to others, but feel holy to us. This is the relationship between two overmen, not two halves becoming whole, but two whole beings co-creating something no one else could, building a union of two creators, not two dependents. Dependence is not love. It is fear disguised as affection. Nietzsche's final gift to us is this, the vision of love as a union between creators. Not two people who complete each other, but two people who amplify each other. They are not each other's crutches. They are each other's mirrors, challenges, muses. Each supports the other's becoming, not by softening them, but by sharpening them. And when this kind of love is lived, truly lived, it becomes more than a relationship. It becomes a work of art, a rebellion, a force that inspires the world simply by existing. You have a choice. You can return to the comfort of conventional love, safe, shallow, full of compromises and unspoken regrets. Or you can step into the fire. You can let Nietzsche's wisdom burn away the illusions that have kept you small. You can dare to show up in your relationships not as a mask, but as a creator, a truth teller, a sovereign being who chooses love, not from need, but from power. This journey is not easy, but it is holy. So if your soul has stirred, if something ancient in you has awakened, don't let it go back to sleep. Seek the untamed, become the overman, and build a love that doesn't fit the world's mold because it was never meant to. Subscribe, explore, become. The dance has only just begun.